Welcome back to the Horus Heresy, Book 27, Unremembered Empire. It has been a while, has it not? Yes, the first Horus Heresy since the end of the War for Badab. Incidentally, taking the chance to shill shamelessly, if you're wondering where all of the other stuff has disappeared, that would be on my second channel, which you can find in the recommended channels list. It's the one with the arch on it, and maybe, God willing, I'll remember to add in some kind of link in the description below, though, let's face it, that's pretty unlikely, isn't it? Even more importantly, there is another link for you to click down there as well, as we have the return of Raid Shadow Legends. Featuring today, the Bannerlords faction. A relative rarity in Teleria, they are a pure human-only group that once rescued the lands they now occupy from the forces of evil. With evil being an ever-expanding term, mind you, one which these days also include their old allies, the High Elves. Some even say that the Bannerlord's king has gone a little bit crazy in his old age. And many of the forces of evil are seizing the opportunity to reclaim land that they erroneously believe to be their own. But fear not, good will always triumph over enemies both externally and those who spread unfounded rumors internally. And dubious moral compass aside, they sure do look awesome, don't they? I've always had a soft spot for the whole heavily armored knight thing. And, crucially, the Bannerlords also understand that sometimes less armor is actually clearly superior. My current favorite thing about Raid Shadow Legends is fighting my way through the game's many deep, dark, or occasionally fiery dungeons, combating boss battles that all require their own unique strategies to defeat, to claim experience, items, and resources that can be used to upgrade my champions into bigger, better badasses. As for what's new in Raid Shadow Legends, the Doom Tower has opened with another rotation, along with a whole host of brand new champions, including a hippopotamus. No further commentary required. So what are you waiting for? Get down to the description box below right now, click the link or scan the QR code, and if you are a new player, new players only, you will receive the epic hero Shunuru, an absolute beast in the Doom Tower, along with 200,000 silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and an ancient shard to let you summon an awesome champion right off the bat. You will find all of these rewards as soon as you enter the game up here in your inbox. The Unremembered Empire. This one's a pretty good one, but a pretty dumb one as well. A lot of people seem to think that this makes Gilliman a traitor, but I don't think that's the case at all. His action in this book is entirely sensible. I've lost contact with the entire rest of the Imperium. The Emperor's dead for all I know, and I have no bloody clue what's going on, beyond the fact that I'm currently getting Roadrunner ravaged by the World Eaters and the Word Bearers. 2 words that I also quite like mixing up, oddly enough. So, the only real good option here is to fortify what I actually can fortify. You know, the portion of the Imperium that I can physically reach. Whereas the other option would be to throw yourself headlong into the warp storms and in all due likelihood simply just get wiped out. Yeah, honestly, you can blame Rowboat Girly Man for being overly pragmatic and cautious on several occasions, but on this one I think he really did the only thing possible. But let's not get too deeply into that right now. let us begin, shall we? We find ourselves on Macragge, where apparently quite a bit of time has passed, and this is one of the derpy parts of this novel. The timeline of the Horus Heresy gets confused real bloody quickly, with conflicts seemingly going on for extended periods of times, whilst the main characters still participating in those conflicts are written about in a completely different portion of the galaxy. But well, details. The Horus Heresy does have a lot of cooks, read writers, at this point in time, so the occasional timeline confusion is practically unavoidable. The planet has been in the grips of a bit of a melancholic mood ever since the fall of Calth, or fall. I suppose the Ultramarines would object to that terminology. The Battle of Calth, and also the Furious Abyss, still chilling out in high orbit above Macragge. The ginormous, possibly large warship designed by the Wordbearers in a, well, as far as Lorgar was concerned anyways, hopeless attempt to kill Macragge itself. Now, of course, we then learned that apparently they built 3 of the damn things, which I already bitched about that. I'm not gonna go over it at length here, but it's just like, okay. So your entire plot point here is, oh yes, this is the biggest and baddest warships ever designed, literally unkillable, designed to just plow into the orbital defense of Macragge and barely break so much as a fart in response, and then open its hugely oversized weapon batteries and just blast apart the entire planet. Not only is this thing, possible to be built, and nobody's thought of it before, but Lorgar of all goddamn people, probably the least subtle and, may I say, at least charismatic of the Primarchs, built not 1, not 2, but 3 of these things in perfect secret. God, this annoys me so much, okay? It's the same problem I have with the bloody Primaris Marines, with Cole the Warp Squirrel apparently having made God only knows how many storage sites with millions of these bloody bastards scattered all throughout the galaxy. And my logistical mind just, no. How did you get all of the energy for this? How are you powering all of the Staxius field generators? How did you get those generators in the first place? That's pretty high advanced tech right there. And these ships are the same, if not worse. These battleships are some of the largest vessels in the entire Imperium. In fact, the largest vessels in the entire Imperium, making ships like the Vengeful Spirit look tiny and puny in comparison. And yet nobody noticed there being literally billions of tons of raw resources just disappeared? No one. Nobody questioned the certainly hundreds of mass transport vessels going to these secret bases out in the middle of nowhere. Again, the sheer quantity of, may I add to, processed raw material something like this would require, the power footprint, the resources. Never mind. Moving on. Ghosts have visited Macragge. No, you know what? One last little gripe. The Furious Abyss is still in orbit above Macragge. They haven't stripped it yet, or at the very least hauled it out of orbit. Come on, that's a literal mountains of, again, not just raw material, but processed metals right up there, which you could just rip apart and easily repurpose at a point in time in which the Ultramarines Legion is at its absolute lowest ebb and probably in desperate need for replacement material. Right. Now I'm done. There are ghosts on Macragge. People have been reporting strange noises, footsteps in seemingly abandoned hallways, and an instrument playing, apparently a psaltery. I don't even know what that is, but I'm assuming some kind of guitarish kind of thingity-bob. It's the best guess I've got anyways. And apparently, this thing is playing to a pitch and tone, a audio footprint that should literally be impossible in the areas where it is heard. And Gilliman is presented with a recording of this precise thing, a psaltery being in a room where it should not be physically possible to produce the acoustics of that instrument. At first, Gilliman had, of course, ordered any and all unusual sightings to be reported to him immediately because, well, Calth, can you blame him? But now, he's calming down a little bit. With this report of an actual recording being captured, he assumes, therefore, that it probably isn't psycho nonsense. Because if it was psycho nonsense, could they record it? Well, actually, genuine question, would psycho nonsense produce a recording? And as we will eventually find out, kinda, in a way, in a sort. This is a really nice opening to the book that I quite enjoy because it's an element of the supernatural. It is unclear, it's hinted at, but considering it's about to reveal an element that nobody knew existed in the 41st millennium, or 30k up until now, it actually comes as a bit of a genuine surprise. It is also further foreshadowed as Gilliman stands in his workroom later, the old primary chamber of Conor, his adoptive father, and looks up at the sky and sees a new star emerge. The first new stellar phenomenon to be observed ever since the ruin storm laid its near impenetrable blanket across the entirety of Ultramar. There is also some interesting mentions here. First and foremost, Gilliman has a good taste in drama, as he recommends The Prince of Denmark to the new chief librarian of the resurgent librarians. I know, that's important, but more importantly is the Prince of Denmark, because in that play, the Norwegians are the good guys. Well, kind of, anyways. The Prince of Denmark, like the Danes ever deserve anything. Anywho, it's a good play. I remember watching one of those recorded movie-like things of an actual theatrical play about it, which was really good. It's old now, and it's, oh god, it was long, like, I don't even remember how many hours, but it took me like a week to watch through all of it in little sections. Really good though, and I would recommend, if you can find it, to pick it up. Now, moving on to the Librarius, because this is kind of a big deal, it is explained that after the events of Calth, Gilliman ordered the Librarius to be reinstated. Kind of an obvious decision, really, and yet the author does something here which I think this is part of the reason why people were like, oh, ha, ha, girly man turned traitor when he declared Imperium Secundus. And God, now this guy is nowhere near as guilty of this as a certain author with a certain lawgar, but it's storytelling via telling, straight up, via giving you the spin, rather than just merely explaining events, because they describe it as lifting the ban being the realm of the Emperor's authority, a decree made by somebody who considers himself the Emperor's equal in these times, as if it was some kind of unilateral decision made by Gilliman because, well, I can do it now, I'm separated from the rest of the Imperium, ha ha ha, when in reality this is a very classical Gilliman thing to do. It is a cold, calculated decision. We are being attacked by goddamn demons. The enemy is using psychic powers against us to great effect, and we seem to have been robbed of one of our greatest weapons by, well, our very brothers, who are currently assaulting us. Obviously, therefore, the decree is null and void. It doesn't require a whole lot of thinking, frankly, does it? This was done via decree, and people like Mortarion were arguing for it. Yeah, it seems quite open and shut, especially also considering that one of the people who sent chaplains to all of these legions to oversee the edict was goddamn Logar. Yeah. I don't really view this as a unilateral kind of tyrannical decision. It's even mentioned specifically that the ban will be lifted at the very least for the duration of the crises. It is an immediate and necessary measure to deal with the current day problem. And if the Big E has a problem with that, well, Gilliman will ask him about it when he can talk to him. And, not the potential deathly quiet of the void. And on the subject of the Emperor, too, there's another little bit of a weird one here, where Gilliman talks a little bit about, or muses to himself, about how they were scattered throughout the galaxy. And Gilliman says that the Emperor told him that this was a ploy by the Chaos Gods to weaken his efforts. And Gilliman is like, I don't believe this. The Emperor is too smart to be fooled like this. Like, too smart to be fooled? Like, how could you have outthought this? The palace was already laid with wards out the wazoo, and he seemingly did everything to prevent this, and from what we know in the other books, it seems to have been direct demon intervention via force rather than any kind of real subtlety. I mean, what kind of clever ploy could the Emperor have employed to stop his laboratory from being torn open by demon gods? And the reason why he thinks this is Gilliman thinks that the Emperor had planned this all along. Merely making physically and mentally superior generals and children was not enough. They had to be hardened. They had to be tested. And so they were scattered across the galaxy to do just that. I can kinda see his point, but considering results like Mortarion and Lorgard and Angron, in retrospect, it doesn't really seem like all that good of an idea, does it? Though, again, I repeat this every time it comes up. I do hate the whole, the Emperor is evil narrative. Look at how mean he was to his sons. If he actually was evil, if the Emperor was actually a bad guy, hell, if the Emperor was merely just a rational actor instead of a doting father, he would have rested a bolt pistol to the back of Angron's skull immediately upon discovering that he hadn't even conquered his own world, much less he had become a slave of the people of that world, and with a single tear running down his cheek, he'd pull that bloody trigger and never look back. I really do think that Gilliman is giving Big E a little bit too much credit here. For all of his incredible intelligence and wisdom as well, we gotta remember, the Emperor is not infallible. The Emperor was around during the golden age of humanity after all, and he was like, well, it seems all handy-dandy, good and dusted. I shouldn't interfere in any way, just chill out behind the scenes and deal with some major problems like, the Void Dragon, that kind of shit. Didn't work out all that well the first time, did it? And so he tries a little bit more of a hands-on approach the second time. The merits of that hands-on approach that is something I'm gonna have to make a video on at some point, but I want to get through the entirety of the Horus Heresy series just in case there's something in the future that completely flips my perspective, because I'm open to be proven wrong, the thing is, I do have, I'm wandering way off point here, but to summarize it very quickly, I build my view of characters based upon the totality of their actions and their characters throughout a series and throughout a setting, which is one of the reasons I don't buy the whole Conrad Curse was just a bloodthirsty killer narrative in his Primarch novel, because it seems to go directly against the character established previously. Death of the author nonsense and all of that. Anywho, moving on. The strange recordings have occurred once more, and this time they're currently ongoing. And so Gilliman is summoned to confront the apparition. Apparently, this time it is not merely the sound of an instrument that can be heard, but the guardsmen have also seen a huge figure, apparently clad in Legionis Astartes battle plates. Now that's very suspicious and seems to perhaps indicate more word-bearers warp nonsense. But before Gilliman's very own eyes, the armored figure appears. And it's no word-bearer. It's an iron warrior, warsmith Dantioch, the loyalist iron warrior. And he is a welcome sight. I quite liked Dantioch, and I really liked his short story, showing what the iron warriors can do on the right side of history. But why is he here? Why the hell is he talking to Girly Man through holographic nonsense? Well, it turns out that after he was, quote-unquote rescued by the Ultramarines, who ensured that he had a way out from the little underground trap he had been assigned to by his Primarch, he was sent to a planet called Sotha, near the outer edges of navigatable space. A rare Terran equivalent world that for some reason had never been colonized, which was very weird because whenever they see a world like that with perfect living conditions, generally speaking, humanity would at the very least have had some kind of failed colony, an attempt to colonize it during the first outward journey of the golden age of humanity. And yet, on Sotha, no sign of any such thing. The answer came when they discovered the Pharos, a large mountain complex housing ancient machinery of an alien nature. And so a small colony, an agricultural colony, was founded to take care of the food and water needs of a little group of xenobiologists and scientists. But Gilliman had a suspicion about this world. The device itself seemed too complex, too significant, and too oddly placed here at the edge of the galaxy to be a mere coincidence. It had to be something special, he figured. In fact, he thought it might be so special that he permanently stationed an entire company of Ultramarines, the 199th, to keep an eye on it. That is a huge deployment of Legion forces for a single world. Now, granted, of course, this is 30k. A full company is not the absurd commitment that it would have been in 40k, but nevertheless, a company of Legionnaires on permanent garrison duty in a backwater world like this? That's one hell of a hunch that Gilliman had, no doubt about it. But it turns out it was correct. Albeit barely understood, it turns out that the Pharos is some kind of communication device. An incredibly powerful one at that, and the star discovered in the firmament above Macragge was the light of the Pharos. The device can actually illuminate any area in the galaxy, essentially shining a giant spotlight on it through the warp, kind of like the Astronomicon, but more flexible. And whilst he didn't quite have a good grasp of its exact capabilities, Dantioch also speculated that the Pharos may have had abilities far beyond merely being a communications device or a spotlight. He even thinks that it may have had the capability to facilitate spot-to-spot teleportation. Almost like a tunnel through the warp. Yes, indeed. It would appear that Dantioch has stumbled upon some form of, not webway per se, this isn't Eldar technology, or well, in part it might be, but a predecessor form of technology, an early version of the webway mayhaps, or some form of linchpin, beacon maybe. Well, I certainly wish him all the best of luck in playing around with that, especially considering Big E's outcome in much the same errand, but I'm sure Dantioch won't have to worry about the sudden and mysterious appearance of a giant red man ruining all of his careful plans and hard work. though he may have to worry about a handful of little doggos, as next we meet Fafnir Bloodbrother, a space wolf dispatched towards Gilliman's homeworld on the orders of Leman Russ and Malkador the Sigillite. Oh me oh my, on what possible kind of mission could they be on, I wonder? If they could ever get an opportunity to even begin it, that is, as they were dispatched just when the ruin storm started settling in across Ultramar. They had been lost for heavens only knows how long, though they were aware of the betrayal of Horus after an unfortunate encounter with a series of Sons of Horus warships. They had had some problems in their transit. Tons of little demonic entities, screaming skulls that appear at a certain time in a certain spot every day. But they're space wolves, they're used to these things. The occasional lost limb here and there, sure, but, you know, in-flight entertainment is always worthwhile, isn't it? And they found the light of Macragge. Or, more correctly, the light of the Pharos illuminating Macragge. And so, of course, they headed towards it. Because they didn't exactly have a whole lot of other options, now did they? Meanwhile, on Macragge, Gilliman was starting to see the fruits of his illumination. Warships both from other legions and mostly ultramarine warships, lost in the storm, were beginning to congregate near Macragge in ever-increasing numbers, to the point that Gilliman had made a habit out of once every day going to greet all of the recent arrivals, both to make them feel welcome and, I presume, also to get a little bit better of a grasp of exactly what kind of a force he could hope to command. The new arrivals on this day was a group of Raven Guard and Salamanders. Gilliman at this point assumed that their Primarchs were dead. The Raven Guard simply accepted it, already in mourning, and you can't really blame them over much, though they will have a joyous surprise, of course. The Salamanders also presumed, or well, Gilliman presumed, that the Vulcan was dead, but they remain optimistic and state that they shall fight beneath Gilliman's banner with the war cry "Vulcan lives," until they are proven correct in their faith. I do like the Salamanders. And then there's Alexis Pollux, fresh from his defeat, quote-unquote, in the Foul system. I still do really dislike that particular battle. I mean, it's one of those fights where the author is like, I need something big, something to match Istvan, something to really hammer home the point that, oh my god, the Imperium is doomed, and all of that shit, you know? And so I'm gonna wipe out a bunch of Imperial fists in a massive fleet battle. The problem is we know how the story ends, and so the casualties of the fists are immaterial. Istvan had impact because of the betrayal of it, because of the looming doom hanging over it all. Fal was just a, oh my god, they're dying, feel horrible about it, and as I have already kind of talked about, you can only pull that card out of your ass so many times until the reader, viewer, watcher, etc., just don't care anymore. Like, oh god, catastrophic casualties, again. Yet they're still fighting. And we really don't see any effect of it. So in other words, nothing happened. But Fal more so than that was just, right, Pollux has Petarabo. He's got his fleet at his mercy. It's presented as if it is now virtually a mathematical certainty that the Imperial Fist will win. It will be a costly victory, but they will be able to crush a huge Iron Warriors fleet formation. It seems assured. And then Pollux is like, well, Daddy's calling, let's pile on the casualties and escape, shall we? Really? Really? You couldn't just chill for another few hours and finish the job? I mean, hell, the warp transition alone would take how many months? Even during favorable warp currents? A couple hours would hardly make any difference, but... oh well. He's here now, and Gilliman pets him on the shoulder and goes like, right, so you're the retard who wasted most of my brother's dudes. Well, he should have had. Anyway, so I also heard he wasted an opportunity to kill Petarabo. I'll demote you, you little shit. Now, he should have said that too, but of course, he accepts him and even remembers his name, because he remembers all of his brother's exceptional officers. Right then. Pollux immediately then asks a couple uncomfortable questions about what exactly Gilliman is doing here, and under what authority Gilliman thinks that he can countermand Pollux's orders, because of course his orders are still to return to Terra, and yet now he's just chilling at Macragge. He could have spent that fucking time at Fel, but I'm gonna drop it now and just move on, yes? Fel. Because of course there are more guests. A bunch of iron hands in ceremonial mourning garb because, well, their Primarch is really properly dead. A group of white scars who have arrived not quite knowing what the hell is going on, frankly. And then, of course, the Space Wolves, sitting quietly sharpening their axes in a corner, menacingly. And then tell Gilliman that they've come here to, kill his ass if they think he's stepping out of line. Space Wolves, not the most diplomatic of people, are they? Apparently, a company of wolves has been dispatched to the side of all the Primarchs now. I can't remember any further mentioning of this amongst any of the other Primarchs, but hey, minor, insignificant details. And a pack of space... Really? A pack of Space Wolves. Like, Gilliman makes a fair point. Do you think you can take me? And they're like, no. Okay. So is this a bit of a waste of time then? Is this pointless antagonism then? Yes, kind of. I mean, if they dispatched custodies like they did with Lorgar, then I'd kind of understand it, though. I do suppose those custodies proved themselves to be utterly and completely incompetent, so maybe wolves would have worked out better. Who knows? Anywho, Gilliman pretty much just laughs it off and tells them to come live near his fireplace. Because, wolves, they'll probably just huddle up near it or something. Speaking of fire, too, by the way, there is, of course, also the arrival of another individual, though he's not going to be in any welcoming halls, at least not right off the bat. His arrival also raises a whole lot of continuity questions, but we'll get to that a little bit later, once he's properly landed. We do get a interesting little view into Gilliman's mind here as well, as he walks with his advisors, one of whom urges him to be straight up about it, declare himself regent, essentially, and make his plans obvious for everyone, and also to put a guard on the wolves, because after all, his Librarius is still operational, and what were the wolves sent to Magnus to deal with again? Yeah, I can see their worry, to put it quite mildly. But Gilliman explains that he does not want to place himself upon the throne of an Imperium Secundus. He can't, because it will seem to everyone like he is seizing power. And he is entirely correct there. It would be an extraordinarily unwise move for him to, whilst doing this, be perceived to be grasping for any kind of personal advantage, and so he cannot. He will have to await an alternative to present itself. One did just dump down as a burning meteor into the suburbs, but again, we'll get to that a little bit later. Thiel of the Ultramarines has popped into orbit as well, coming all the way from Calth, where he had supposedly dedicated himself to the underground war, and yet here he is. Gilliman is, of course, overjoyed, and it'll be very nice to speak to Thiel again. A worthwhile little trick there on the side of the author, though how the hell Gilliman fell for this? Thiel had dedicated himself, as the book mentions, to the Underground War, and was not to return to Ultramar or Macragge before having cleansed every last word-bearer from that planet. And yet, here he shows up. A year or so later? Man, I know Thiel's good at his job, but, Guilliman seems to overestimate him somewhat. And of course, once they're in their private audience, Thiel and his buddies draw their guns on Guilliman, who only after killing all of them realize, oh, Alpha Legion. Huh. Well, I did feel like something was a bit off about them, sure. He then even goes on to say, I did hear about the Alpha Legion doing this precise very thing, but, I couldn't ask a bunch of returning suspicious-looking veterans to hand over their weapons. That would be uncouth of me. Well, Guilliman, you deserved this one. I also like how through the entire encounter they make a big song and dance about how time slows to a crawl. Bolter rounds can be seen fizzing through the air. And just as one of the Alpha Legionnaires, Thiel, quote-unquote, has his blade at Guilliman's throat, they suddenly just stop fighting and instead have themselves a little conversation. Guilliman, why are you doing this? Who are you? Thiel, I am your death. Guilliman, no really. Who are you? Thiel, I am Alfarius, death to the false emperor. Guilliman, oh really? That's fascinating. By the way, if I may offer a piece of advice for the future, don't just start talking to me randomly whilst we're having a life and death struggle, especially not when I have a bolt gun pointed towards your chest. Blam blam blam. And so ends the fight. Victory, Guilliman, via verbal distraction. Don't get me wrong, dramatic license and all, but still. Made even worse, too, by the fact that it's followed up by... I'm not even gonna frame it first, I'm just gonna read to you the quote on the next page. Ahahaha. There is an art to dying, but it is a dying art. Badum. Fucking Tish. Corvus Corax. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. You do not expect me to read that and then not go like, yeah, I'm not gonna nitpick that whole slow-mo thing. No, you're antagonizing me now, book. You are bloody antagonizing me. And so I'm gonna yell at you for it, alright? We have an understanding. Good. Meanwhile, the Ultramarines dispatched to find whatever smacked down into the city have discovered themselves a charred corpse. Which is weird, considering it fell from orbit, and, well, human fleshy bodies tend to not really survive the whole, falling from orbit thing. But that mystery is going to have to wait for a little bit longer, as another mystery needs answering too. As the Palace Guards are asking themselves, what is that infernal racket coming from Guilliman's office? Ah, boy oh boy, that blueberry bastard makes so much noise. And then, of course, they get in there and find all of the dead Ultramarines, Alpha Legionnaires, and Guilliman sitting over in a corner, heavily wounded. Apparently, he was fine 5 seconds ago, fine enough to have a conversation with his would-be killer, and then blow 3 bullet holes through his chest, but this is a nice opportunity to remind us all that whilst Guilliman may be more than a man, he's only more than a man. In the words of his female advisor, Uton, who takes the opportunity to berate one of his captains, one of his chief lords, in fact, for mansplaining to her. Oh well. Now, I do kind of get to the point here. Guilliman is overworked and stressed, and he ordered Thiel through all of the security checks without letting them really get a good look at him because he just wanted a break to talk to one of his veterans. I get it. Kind of. But at the same time, Thiel literally promised to never leave Calth until he'd killed every last bloody word-bearer. And Guilliman knew how many word-bearers there were left. Again, either he severely overestimates Thiel's potential as a field marshal here, or he's forgotten how to tell time since last we saw him. And on the note of Papa Smurf, again, now that we've had our moment of drama, oh god, Gilliman's wounded. He's up and about now, and bitching at his commanders too. I do really like this book for its overarching themes of the Unremembered Empire, and I really do like the betrayal of Gilliman as well, but let's just say that Corvus Corax quote has got me in a slightly overcritical mood, yes? And this scene in particular just feels so pointless. Gilliman's heavily wounded. Okay, that's not how we left him. He had some scarring on his face, some shrapnel damage from a bolt around, nothing that would get even remotely close to felling a Primarch under any other normal circumstances. We've read about Primarchs having entire swords rammed through their spines, and they're fine. And yet a light peppering of shrapnel is going to be enough to fell Gilliman, is it? Alright. And the entire intermittent scene, then, is nothing more than an excuse for Houghton to berate Augustine, one of the recently elevated Lords of Ultramar, whom she advised against, and she's now whinching at him for putting too much faith in Gilliman. The Chief Librarian even kind of looks at him like, how dare you mansplain? And to make it even worse, the moment she leaves the room, there's Gilliman, walking out of the Apothecarium, fine and dandy, right as rain. And of course, he immediately sets in to Augustine. Though, he gives him the order to look over the security measures. He is the First Lord of Ultramar, this is his job, and Augustine answers, right, I'll delegate it to someone. Right, yes, that is absolutely the response of an Ultramarine. What? I can't be bothered. Really now. And Gilliman chastises him for this absurd response. I genuinely dislike any scene like this, where it serves no other purpose than to hang a giant sign above a character saying, dislike this person. This one right here. The one the arrow points at. This one. This one. This one. It makes me feel as if I'm being smacked over the head with a manuscript. Even more so, of course, when Gilliman moment thereafter goes, yes, I guess I was wrong. My female advisor who knows nothing of military matters whatsoever knows far better than me who should be leading the Ultramarines legions, as it turns out. Apparently, he's not enough of a diplomat, which seems an odd complaint in the current year in the Imperium, but there you are. Gilliman does talk a little bit about how he was trying to raise his legion to be more than just warriors, to look towards the future, and a time when there will be only peace. Yeah, I think you will find, Rowboat, that your choice was actually a pretty good one, considering, again, the future. But it's been about 5 whole seconds since we've had a dramatic scene change, so let's bounce on over to the outer edges of the Macragge system, where a stealth cutter is entering and eventually dumping a perpetual onto the Ultramarines' capital world. Daemon Prytanis, or at least that's what we know him as, because he doesn't actually know his own name. Which is quite the nice thing in this version of the 30k universe, where names all of a sudden gives you real power over other people. Seems unreasonable, considering everyone knows the name of Gilliman and Horus and Bedrapo and everyone and etc. It seems like the demons would simply win by opening a Wikipedia article at this point, but details, I've whinged about the name thing already. Let's simply just accept it. Or maybe it's something particular to perpetuals, who knows. Anywho, this guy is a Cabal assassin, recruited from the beaches of Iwo Jima. It's a peculiar point to pick someone off from, I suppose. Iwo Jima, by the way, I have some spicy thoughts on the US Marine Corps and their complaints about the Pacific Campaign, which I shan't delve too deeply into here. Anywho, he's been killing people for the Cabal, humans primarily, for quite some time, including Martin Luther King and Robert F. Kennedy. Right. why did the Cabal want... never mind. Apparently the Cabal is even very understanding and explains in excruciating detail why these people have to die, so I guess Martin Luther King would have upset the Eldar schemes. Robert F. Kennedy... Yeah, never mind. It's just an opportunity to dump some references in the book so that you can be like, oh, the good man in Memphis. Oh, never mind. Now then, what is his task here then? Well, he is an assassin, so one might already be making one's mind up on that. And they have also explained to him why they're currently doing what they're doing. They refer to the Civil War as the Horus Gambit. And boy, I hate this entire plot point so bloody much. And here's the thing again. I need to make a whole video on this at some point, but it'll be a huge one, so it'll be a while. But we have already seen the Chaos Gods themselves admit that, yeah, the Emperor is winning. He is dangerous. He is defeating them. He is actually hurting them. And now we also have the Cabal going, yeah, shit, that golden boy, he's outside of our ability to control, and he's literally outwitting us in our own galactic chess game. Darn. Well, that can't be allowed to happen, so now we're gonna try the Horus Gambit, which means that they are going to try and make Chaos win so hard that it burns itself out. Ah yes. The brilliant way to defeat Chaos and protect all the other races of the galaxy, giving Chaos complete control and an army, legions upon legions of superhuman super soldiers, and then hoping they'll be too busy killing each other to genocide the rest of you cunts. Yeah. Sounds like a brilliant plan. No ways that could possibly go wrong, eh? But we'll wrap up part 1 there before I wander off on too much of a tangent. And hopefully, I'll see you all again very, very soon for part 2. Until then, have a good day.